Hello and welcome to All Four Wins Football and Lower League Lingo, episode number 26. That's half a year's worth of weekly shows, all dedicated to the lower leagues of the Women's Football Pyramid. And we will be kicking it off right after this introduction. Do have to say, I really do love our introduction. It is just such a jaunty little tune. How can you fail to be anything other than happy once you've heard it? And of course, how could you possibly be anything other than happy when you're in the company of these three fine folk to discuss all things women's football? We have got our Midlands representative, John Foster, MUFC. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you, Barry. Yeah, I'm glad to be back after the little break last week. So yeah, looking forward to this one.
It was a bit weird having a little break, but it was probably nice as well. Good little chance to just recharge the batteries. Of course, we have our Northern representative sat on the bottom left there. Gareth, how are you?
Good, thank you very much.
Excellent news. And we have our Southwest representative with us as well, and we need to whisper very quietly because we don't want to wake anybody up. But Stu, how are you?
I'm very good. We should have some context. I've got young children asleep in the room next to me, so I'm going to be speaking in a nice, quiet voice, not getting too animated. But yeah, it's great to join you all.
It's going to be like Jack and Ori for some people. That'd be nice. It's like a nice little bedtime story.
So all the viewers will be falling asleep with my dulcet tones.
Well, it's been said.
The mouse took a stroll through the deep dark wood.
There we go. It's going to be great. So we've got loads to go through. 6 leagues to have a little look at and see where they're going at. And to be honest with you, writing up the league tables, it's starting to get down to the business end, and there is some excitement to be had. But we do have 2, I call them confirmed relegations. The lower league is very exciting for the fact that they look relegated, and you just never know. Things come along, and there's a little reprieve given. It's a bit like the death penalty in America. So it's a bit like that. They're gone, but then they're not. So it's very strange. Gareth, how has he done that? How's he found the death penalty? I'm great with an analogy. It's a good job you're not kicking off, Gareth. Oh, hang on a minute. Yes, you are. We're going to be going straight into the Northern Premier as normal. And here we are. So, not a lot changing, but by golly, there is a lot going on in the Northern Premier. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, I think, I'm sure John will jump in because the top of the table looks very Midlands. I think at this point it feels like Forest's to lose. They've kind of got a gap to Wolves, and both sides have not really been dropping many points at all this season. So especially with Forest kind of coming out on top against Burnley at the weekend, that kind of feels like curtains for Burnley now. 8 points off Forest. Only 5 games to go. That feels like it's going to be a really difficult turnaround for them. Stoke only with 3 points and 2 points. 3 points. Sorry, I'll start again. 3 games to go, 2 points behind. That feels like that's going to be tricky as well. So you imagine it's down to Forest and Wolves for the title, and Forest have only dropped 6 points all season. So I think it's realistic to expect them to maybe only drop a few more between now and the end of the season, especially with Wolves sort of slipping up against Hull at the weekend. That will feel big for Hull. You look at that bottom end of the table, and I would at this point expect to see Halifax in the Division 1 North in August. And I think John was hiding behind his hands there as well, because I would be surprised if it's not Stourbridge joining them down there as well. I think, again, for the mid-table, I think it's another impressive season so far. I mean, like I say, there's 4 games to go for them, but Feds have had another impressive season. You know, there is no kind of big men's team supporting them. They play at a leisure centre down the road from me in Liverpool, but they've done really well for themselves in terms of publicity and the selling of merch and trying to make their match days feel like an occasion. They have kind of entertainment there sometimes and things as well, and sell merchandise, and they had that documentary. So I think, you know, Feds, I think, are a club that a lot of other clubs further down the pyramid could look at and see as actually there is this pathway through the pyramid to be playing at a really strong level and competing with some of the best teams in the WNL without an awful lot in terms of backing from big men's sides, and obviously rugby there as well, in a similar situation. Slightly different that they have come down and rebranded from the Championship. But yeah, I think it's nice to see a couple of clubs in the middle of the table who don't have the same big backings, that, you know, they're not the same recognisable names that Forest, Wolves, Stoke, Burnley, West Brom, Derby, etc. are.
Do you want to jump in
teams
there,
will bring
Stu?
John, I was just about to ask you, what's your thoughts? Obviously, the Midlands have representatives within the Northern Premier, and looking at it, as Gareth says, it's very Midlands heavy. So, Midlands doing you proud.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know Stu wants to talk about Stoke as well, but I do remember at the start of the 26 weeks, I said Stoke would finish above Wolves, and that's never looked away up until around about now, even though they have played one game more. That was one prediction I made, and I kind of stuck by even when Stoke was towards the bottom half, based on like the games that Stoke played at the start of the season. But yeah, so cracking job for Stoke. Their 2 years of I guess putting the foundations down last season has obviously reaped the rewards this season. Great weekend for Forest. I just shout out a few goal scorers in the league for last weekend. So Sophie Domingo scored on the 29th minute, and Freya Thomas scored on the 36th minute. So obviously a great weekend for Forest. Sporting Calcer, Tiana Russell Cartwright scored for Calcer, and I managed to speak to Andy Mulligan earlier this week that went out on Switchboard Radio. And until you get to know some of these managers, what they're up against, you don't realise how much of a great job that they've done. You know, Calcer's budget, bearing in mind it was like a brand new team in the league this year, was probably the smallest in the league, and yet they've still somehow managed to get 13 points, keep all their best players, and recruit well in the area. Obviously, they've got a great relationship with Wolves as well, so got a few players on loan from them. Regarding Wolves, Hull 3, Wolves 3. So Hope Knight scored 2 for Hull with Ellen Tanzer getting on the score sheet as well. One on goal that went Wolves' way, plus an Abby Jenner goal and a Destiny Tucson's goal. Dan McNamara once again up for Manager of the Month, so that could potentially be two on the trot for him. Don't need to go into Liverpool fans too much because I know that Gareth's just kind of mentioned that one, but yeah, you know, finishing 6th at the moment, if not higher as well. Liverpool fans, fantastic season so far. West Brom 1-0 against Rugby Borough. Obviously, the County Cup final on the way there. That will be a repeat of that fixture. So I don't know if there was maybe playing mind games in that game. I generally don't know. Liv Rabjan on the score sheet for West Brom, but 7th at the moment with games in hand. West Brom, that's really good. So since I've been following Midlands football, which is about 3 or 4 years, they're looking really good in regards to league form. And then yeah, Stoke 4, Stourbridge 0. Not a bad result in all fairness for Stourbridge. It could have been a lot worse away from home. Had sickness the week before that, so a game got postponed. Millie Ravening scoring 2, Delphi Cole and Alicia Collins as well on the score sheet there. So that kind of puts Stourbridge in a position where they need to win Hull this week to kind of survive. Not mathematically, but realistically. They need to get 3 more wins now because of their goal average. So, yeah, not a great spot for Stourbridge to be in, but all credit to Calcer.
Absolutely, Calcer did incredibly well to just pull away that a little bit more. Stu, we understand you want to come in and have a little chat on this as well?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question with regards to Stoke City. From all that you tend to believe on the outside, it's been a little bit turbulent there over the last few years. People behind the scenes obviously moving along, and you think it would be a bit of a shambles, but by all accounts, it's been going really well. So for those that are up north, I would ask, can you tell me a little bit more about what has been going on? Is it just a really tight knit group of players?
Sorry, you just broke up for me there, Stu. What team were you on about, sorry?
Stoke.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I've followed them a little bit, especially the last couple of years. And as far as I was aware, they're putting a huge amount of money last season, but you never really saw the rewards for it. Recruited well this summer, and obviously they've just managed to. I think they're trained 4 times a week, which doesn't really get spoken about that much. So obviously, when you're doing that, you can actually see the patterns of play on the field as well. It's not just about intensity and recruiting top players. You can actually see them working really well together in a team. And when I saw them play Stourbridge, not the game just gone, but the game previously, that was probably one of the best teams that we played against quite comfortably. So even though it was only 4-0, the way they kind of dominated that game, just their possession play is massively up there. We saw some of the best players in the area as well. I don't think they're wasting money this year. I think they're being very clever about it. And yeah, that they are slowly creeping up that table. And who knows? There's always one team that wants to make a push in this league to go full time. Will it be them? They only seem one step away from going full time now. So maybe the foundations are in place and they are ready to make that push next season.
Having family from the area, it's good to see.
No, very, very interesting. And like I say, it's going to be quite a thing to see how this league table ends up. We've got 5 games for Forest, 4 games for Wolves, and 3 games for Stoke. And this cigarette paper between them all, although it does look all doom and gloom at the bottom of the table. So we shall see. We're going to look over now at the Southern Premier. Lots more red and green on this one. There's been a fair bit of switching around, and it's again been quite a start to quite an end, to the season over here in the Southern Premier. So Hashtag United have won 3 games on the trot, which is great news for them, and it's put them top of the Southern Premier on 45 points, which feels like a really, really good thing, especially when you consider that for them there was a 10-1 win over Milton Keynes Dons, a 1-0 win over Ipswich, and a 3-1 win over Cheltenham for those 3. Now, the Ipswich game, obviously, 1-0. There's no official goal scorer that's been put on full time. So that sounds like it's probably been a goal that has gone in off of somebody else's ankle or something like that. So it looks like that game probably should have finished 0-0. It didn't. Hashtag have therefore managed to get the advantage in that respect. But Ipswich will be sat there looking at this and not too worried just yet. That was Ipswich's first loss of the season, and they still have 3 games in hand, and they're only 6 points behind, so they need 7 points in order to be ahead of Hashtag United when all is said and done. So that's quite intriguing. Exeter have swapped places with Oxford United as well. Lewis swapping places with AFC Wimbledon in the middle of the park, and Billericay have escaped, as it stands, out of the relegation zone. Amazing stuff going on there. Plymouth and Billericay have played each other and they drew 2-2, but Billericay's win over MK Dons has ensured that they are just out of the relegation zone by 1 point. But there are 2 games in hand for Plymouth, but it's not going to be easy for any of those teams at the moment. So when you look down at the bottom, obviously Milton Keynes are now gone. They are one of the people just waiting for their final meal, and then it won't be too long until we see them drop back to probably Division 1 South East, you would see there. So that's where they'll be off to. But there's still that other spot available, and it's going to be an interesting one. Plymouth have got 4 away games that they need to play. So although they've got games in hand, they're not going to be too easy. They've got to travel to Exeter, which is by no means an easy job. Watford, who you can see sat up there in 5th. Ipswich, who are fighting for a title. Perhaps their best chances for the points come in against Gwalia away and AFC Wimbledon at home, and they would certainly be the two games that I would be bookmarking as a Plymouth fan if that's where I was looking to get my points. But if you've been a Ricky, what about you? Well, they've got 2 away games. They've got to play AFC Wimbledon as well, which again is a good place to highlight their opportunities. They've got to play Lewis, a mid-table side, away from home, and Oxford United at home. So there's no guaranteed point. I mean, there's no such thing as guaranteed points, as we know. But for both of those teams, it looks incredibly tight as to who is going to escape the drop. And as we say up top, anything could happen there. Hashtag still have quite a lot to do. They've got 3 games to play. They've still got to play Gwalia. So Gwalia have got big saves going on at both ends of the table here, and also playing Exeter and Oxford, which again is not the easiest of games. So although they got past Ipswich, 2 big matches there. Whereas Ipswich still have a few more games to play, but they've got to play Gwalia home and away. Plymouth, who are obviously fighting for their life. Watford, middle of the table. MK Dons, which is probably as close to a guaranteed 3 points as you can get, and Cheltenham. So I can pick it. I have no idea. Stu, you're my resident other southerner, who can help us out with these sort of things. Where's your thinking going on this? Because it's an unbelievable table, but I'm not sure I'd be willing to bet much at all as to which one's going to stay up, which one's going to go down, and which one's going to win the league.
It's the most fun of the Premier tables, I think, because you've just got everyone beating everyone on every other day, to be honest. So it's the hardest to predict. I'm interested to go through a quick straw poll with you guys as to whether you'd rather be in Ipswich Town's position, bang on form, games in hand, looks like wins could be almost inevitable, or not, given what I've just said, or would you rather be in Hashtag's position and have the points on the board? So first of all, Gareth, which one?
Usually I said rather have points on the board, but I think at this point in the season, looking at the 2 run-ins, Hashtag have to play Exeter and Oxford, whereas Ipswich have Gwalia twice, Plymouth, MK Dons, Cheltenham, and Watford. So I think, given that, I think I would rather be Ipswich. I feel like Hashtag are going to be looking over their shoulder a little bit when some of those games in hand start being played. But then again, to contradict myself, when you're playing against Cheltenham, Plymouth, Gwalia, they're scrapping for their lives, so they're not easy games to have at this point in the season either. So I don't know. I think I'd still go with Ipswich and contradict what I've said all season long. Yeah, I don't know what John thinks.
No, I think I fancy the same as you there, Gareth, to be honest. I think, yes, they will be scrapping for their lives, put them down towards the bottom for a reason, aren't they? I'm sure they've been scrapping all season, but still, still like minus 20, 30 goals, goal average. So, yeah, I think I'll be looking at it. If I'm playing those teams, I'd be fairly confident about picking up those points. But just
Oh, come. Sorry.
no, because I just while I got this spotlight very briefly, isn't it a talking point how you could potentially get maybe 17, 18, 19 points in this league and still not stay up, whereas in Tier 3, not in the Northern Premier, you might only need 7 points to stay up. I don't know what that actually means in the league. I don't know where the strengths and weaknesses are in that league, but to say that you need maybe 10 extra points to stay up in this league, it's definitely a talking point somewhere.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I've just I've done a little bit of maths and a little bit of predicting and guessing. I think Ipswich is going to win the league. I think they're going to finish on 54 points. They could finish on more, but I'm being conservative with Hashtag finishing on 50. So that's where I've gone with that one. But I also predict, this will be quite interesting, that the Plymouth and Billericay decision is going to come down to goal difference. I can see Plymouth maybe getting 4 points and Billericay getting 3. And so if that happens, they've got 1 goal in terms of goal difference between them. So I think that could be unreal. Stuart, anything more you want to add to the Southern Prem?
Well, I kind of imagine everyone's kind of hoping that it will be, or everyone behind the scenes of the FA are probably hoping that it's going to be Plymouth and Milton Keynes Dons that will come down, because that would be nice and easy. One comes down in the southeast, one comes down in the southwest, so it evens it out a little bit. If you find that Milton Keynes Dons and Billericay both come down, then you've got two teams that are likely going to go down in the southeast, which then we might have a situation where Worthing were, as the most easterly of the southwest, if you follow me, were pushed over. So that could cause a few interesting debates with regards to redrawing the lines, but I would probably bring that one up with our friend Chris Gadsby, Women's Football Chat, because he's the man in the know for all of that sort of thing.
No, for
Being
sure.
selfish,
I think it's going to be
being
unreal.
selfish, with my Moneyfields hat on, I would quite like to see Plymouth Argyle and Cheltenham come down. Obviously, we're not going to get both of them. So I'd like Plymouth to come down because it'd be nice to have a big recognised name within our division.
I mean, the other interesting part about that, of course, is that Plymouth are playing Exeter tonight at Exeter. So we will have a even clearer idea of what is happening down there and whether or not there's been any miracle points gained. So do keep your eyes on Twitter. Both sides, I'm sure, will be updating their feeds. So get yourself on that and have a little look. So that is the Tier 3 chat done. Now we move down to Tier 4 and we return to Division 1 North. Now, Gaza, me old mucker, you would look at this league and say this is probably going to be a chat of about 30 seconds, but even though they are all still as you were, again, lots of little stories developing here in what you have described many times as the most exciting league for you. What's happened here? I can't hear a word. Are you all right? Where you gone? He's lost the power of speech. No, he's muted. Let's unmute him again.
I tried to connect my headphones, but it didn't work. So, well, hang on 1 second.
The good news is we can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me? Cool. Right, cool. Yeah, I think, apologies, I tried to connect my headphones to stop any echo, but it didn't work. Well, I can hear you, but you can hear me, so that sort of defeats the object. There's been quite a lot happening, actually, over the week. I think the relegation battle is still really close. Both Doncaster Bells, Norton, and Fylde all lost at the weekend. Fylde losing to Huddersfield, Doncaster losing to Cheadle Town, and Norton losing to Leeds United. And the teams at the top all won their games. So Cheadle obviously beating Doncaster 3-0 away from home. Chorley beating Barnsley 4-1 at home. Leeds United beating Norton and Stockton 3-0 at home. And Middlesbrough beating Stockport 4-0 at home. So, yeah, it very much seems as though not an awful lot is happening, but the teams at the top keep winning and the teams at the bottom are struggling to pick up points. The only side who managed to pick up points down that bottom was York City, who scrapped their way to a 3-2 win against Durham Sestria. So you would expect, or I would expect, that given that they are 6 points clear of Fylde, and Fylde have 4 games to go, that York are probably safe. The reason I say York Fylde there is because they have a game in hand over Doncaster. I imagine I can't see Doncaster turning 5 points over with 3 games to play. Stu makes a great point in the fact that Norton and Stockton have the league's top goal scorer with Bianca Owen, who scored 23 goals in those 17 games, and they are still down there scrapping. But I think what we'll look at over the course of the season is, I don't want to say which way I think it's going to go. I suspect if you force me to make a prediction that those two in the bottom two would be the two to come down. I imagine we'll look back at once the season is done and say that Bianca has kept Norton up. I think her goals will end up being enough to keep them up. I think, Stockport at times, we've said they could get dragged into that scrap. Barnsley as well. I think them two are okay now, in terms of where we're looking. But the top of that table is still so close. You mention a cigarette paper between teams, between Cheadletown and Middlesbrough. That is literally a cigarette paper. If Middlesbrough win their game in hand, then they will literally be there on goal difference. And I don't think it's a hugely outlandish prediction, um, to say that Middlesbrough will win their remaining games. Their remaining games being Norton and Stockton, Durham Sestria, Doncaster Rovers, and Barnsley. So 4, I think, games that they will be looking at, thinking these are absolutely winnable. And I think Cheetah will say the same. Norton and Stockton, Huddersfield and Fylde. So I don't think we're going to be in a situation really where there's anything at all between these teams. I think if any of them slip points, that's a surprise. Not a shock, because you never know. Football is football, but it will be a surprise, I think, if any of them lose a game. Dropping points, I think, will be a surprise. And with only 7 goals between them, if Middlesbrough win their game in hand by 3 goals or something, then it really could come down to the last day and just who scores the most goals on the final day of the season, which I think will be so emblematic of how the title race in this league has gone all season. We've had Middlesbrough at the top, we've had Chorley at the top, we've had Leeds at the top, we've had Cheadle at the top, I think, for the most amount of time. But yeah, I mean, personally, I would like to see Cheadle win. I think, again, kind of from a personal perspective, they're a team that we've played against quite a lot, and I think it shows. I think it's good for football and good for the pyramid if it shows that you can be promoted from the regional leagues and recruit well and challenge for the. I think it shows you can challenge for the title anyway. If they actually go on and do it and achieve back-to-back promotions, then that's a huge statement for any team now that is towards the top of the table, in the regional league. Chester the Street and Bradford gunning for the Northeast title. Wythenshawe 6 points away from claiming the title in the Northwest. Those 3 teams can all start to look for next season, think if we recruit properly and we have a squad that can do this, we can absolutely have a run at the title. Although I do suspect that Middlesbrough and Leeds may be a different beast next season, given if it ends up staying as it is, I think they could be a different beast next year.
No, I think all very fair, as you've just said there. And again, still absolutely no clue what is going to happen in this league, but they are incredibly close to reaching the finish line. And I, for one, can't wait to see how it ends. John, we're going to pop back over to you for the Midlands. I suppose, really, the major news all happening at the top of the table, not too much happening down towards the bottom, but a little bit of a charge from Loughborough Lightning. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about what's happening there?
Yeah, well, it's funny you should say that, because it was the Loughborough Lightning results, which was the surprise. There was only really one surprise in this league this weekend, and it was Loughborough against Worcester. So Worcester's obviously towards the bottom. Loughborough on that charge, as you're saying, it was a 1-1 draw. So it was actually Worcester that took the lead after 52 minutes with Jess Fasnich, and it took a super sub to come on and score an equaliser in the 73rd minute for Loughborough. But yeah, so that was probably the one game where there was a bit of a surprise. I think throughout the whole season it's been a 4-horse race, and even now when you look at Leafield in 4th, they've got a game in hand over the second and third place team, and they could even go equal on points with Loughborough, putting the pressure on them. So that's still the same way as it's been all season. But what I would say is, with 2 games in hand and a far superior goal difference, you can kind of see why Loughborough would be firm favourites there. Leathfield won Notts County 4-1. So their Christmas signing, Janelle Straker, got the first goal. She's been scoring quite a bit since she's been there. Hayley Crackle, Lucy Davis, and Tiara Jade with the other 3 goals there. Solihull Moors 0 and Balmere 5, which was a good result for Balmere, obviously, not just because of the score, but I think they're doing a lot of things behind the scenes and on the training ground, and it's coming to fruition quite a lot now, and you can see that they've crept up the table and really consolidated their best of the rest, I guess, kind of position. Jade Formister with 2, and Leonie Joyce with 2 as well. She's scoring for fun since she's been back from injury. So well done to Balmere there. I spoke about Worcester and Loughborough. Lincoln City 0, Barnsley 4. So yeah, again, Lincoln City, we can kind of see what they're up against, and it's a shame for them. Are they just building for next season there? Are they kind of looking at what players they can keep? Or I don't know. They've got some local teams around there that they may lose players to as well. But yeah, they're in obviously a tough spot. Northampton 5, Lincoln United 1, which is a cracking result for them, because Lincoln United aren't no mugs, and so it was great to be able for Northampton to score 5 past them, and it was actually Lincoln United who took the lead after 25 minutes as well. So 5-1 result there, which is really good for them, plus 38 goal average now. So yeah, 2-1 at half time, and obviously they came back guns blazing there to win 5-1. Southern Coalfield had a brand new manager this week. Steve Benyon left just after a few weeks, really. I think he joined in December time. Done well results wise, but he was just saying that due to the challenges of his work life, he's a teacher. So being able to be a teacher and manage at this level was just a little bit too much for him at the moment. So he's stepping away from the game, he said. So they've currently got an interim manager. So Sutton Coalfield lost to Peterborough 3-2. And it was Peterborough who scored the first 3 goals in that game and pretty much killed it off in the first half an hour, with Liv Owen scoring the 90th minute to kind of create a bit of an atmosphere at the end. But no, so I think there's no major surprises, and I think that's probably explains all the equal signs that you got there. I think that the top teams kind of won the bottom teams, but a massive credit to Worcester for holding Loughborough. It was a great result for them. That's kind of kept them away from the relegation area as well.
Certainly has. Absolutely no doubt about that whatsoever. And like you say, Worcester will be delighted with those points. And with just 3 games to go, it's not looking great. Lincoln City obviously would now need to win every single one of their games, with Worcester and Solihull losing theirs in order to stay up. So that is one spot that's looking like it's gone. But you never know. Solihull Moors might be able to turn it around. Right. Over to me, Division 1 South East, and there's not a huge amount really to run through on this one. Real Bedford are doing incredibly well. They won 2 games just like Norwich on the trot since we last spoke. They've added 9 goals between them to their goal difference, and certainly cementing their spaces as looking like the 2 teams that are going to fight for the title. There's outside bets for London Bees and Chatham Town, with London Bees just overtaking Chatham due to the fact that Chatham dropping down a bit, really a draw and a loss in their 2 games, with London Bees winning both of theirs. So that's why we have the top 3 that we have. But of course, all of the chasing pack have to deal with the fact that Real Bedford have got 2 games in hand and are already a point clear. So it's definitely advantage Bedford, and you would imagine that we are going to be seeing Real Bedford moving up into Tier 3. That would not surprise me in the slightest. And again, it would be quite a sensible thing. As we've already seen, there's going to be that swap with the fact that MK Dons will come down to the southeast. So you would imagine that's going to be the swap, is Bedford for the Dons. But it's not guaranteed. It might as well be. They've got Ashford Town, which you can see right down the very bottom there, Chesham, who are right down the very bottom there, Sudbury, who are a mid-table side, London Seaward are already gone, and Dulwich Hamlet. So if you were looking for a title running as a football team, that is, I mean, what's that, 4 of the 5 bottom teams? You couldn't ask for much more than that, really, could you? All lower half opposition. So I will be absolutely gobsmacked if Bedford do not walk this division. The other sides, much trickier ones. Norwich have to play Bees, and that, of course, will decide really which one of those two is going to be the pretenders to the throne, perhaps. I think, with Norwich then facing Actonians and QPR, and London Bees playing Ashford and Chesham. You would argue Bees have got the better running after that game, so if they can get a win over Norwich, it could well be Bees that are trying to chase. But again, Real Bedford look like they're going to nail this league. And down the other end, London Seaward, it's game over for them. That's mathematically impossible for them to escape. They lost 5-0 to QPR at the weekend. It's been a torrid season for London Seaward. Nothing has gone the way they would have liked it to go, and it looks as though they would be the ones to drop. But much like other leagues, and certainly the one that you were just talking about, Stu, with the dilemmas of having teams that are close together dropping down, Ashford Town being in Middlesex very well could be the other side to drop as well. And it's a question as to which of these teams drops into the London and South East and which one drops into the Eastern region. So it again could require a little bit of sideways movement, which is always a giggle. And I wouldn't be surprised if that means you see Barking potentially return back to the Eastern region. But we shall wait and see what happens, because they might not go down, but their first game is against Bedford, and that in itself is bad enough. But even if Chesham don't win their game, their next game then is Chatham. So for the first 2 games, I can't see him getting a point out of that. And to be honest with you, that will then render it pretty much useless. They finish off with QPR, London Seaward, London Bees, and Actonians. So I think for all intents and purposes, although Ashford are mathematically safe, I'm going to be gobsmacked if they that would be Houdini would be impressed if Ashford Town get out of the predicament that they have found themselves in. So it looks like the 2 teams are down, and it looks like we know who's going to be winning the title, and all we've got left to do on this channel with that is to confirm it as and when. So that's the South East, and now we're going to nip over to Stu to take us through his home of the Southwest, which is very John-esque. Lots of equals, not a lot changing, but perhaps you can give us the lowdown.
As a league, it looks like everything is going to form at the moment. We had AFC Bournemouth with a 2-0 win over Abingdon, which I think everyone would have predicted. Although, to be honest, I think it's all credit to Abingdon to keeping the score down to quite a respectable 2-0, to be honest. So fair play to them. But all that Steve Cuss and the Cherries are going to be interested in is 3 points. They're obviously in a hugely commanded position, but speaking to some of the players last week, I know that they're still not taking it for granted. I think they're probably still a little bit burnt by last year losing the league title on goal difference to... Oh, no, it wasn't goal difference. It was 2 points in the end to Exeter City. But that was right at the end with a draw against Keynsham Town, which everyone would have expected them to win. But let's face it, they've got that league sewn up. There's no one now that's going to be able to come anywhere near them. As someone that's involved in Moneyfields, we want to push them as close as we can and try and delay that title celebration for as long as possible. But no one's going to be catching them. And just moving further down, we've got Swindon Town, who haven't had the best start to the year. They've absolutely steamrolled Worthing 6-0 in a game at the county ground, so that would have been almost a perfect day for them. You've obviously got Annabelle Colston just absolutely smashing the goals away. She started it off in the 10th minute, and then we had a Tori St Clair hat-trick. She's doubled her goal tally over the season in one game. She's now on 6. But that's a perfect day for Swindon Town, so they'll be well happy with that. Worthing, just a really unpredictable side. They've got talent within the squad, but they've not really been able to sort of harness it, and I think maybe they're lacking that sort of out-and-out goal scorer that Swindon Town have with Annabelle Colston. But I think they can be sort of quite happy with the sort of top four finish. Bristol's form seems to have dipped slightly with a couple of recent defeats, so I think that top half is pretty much nailed on, to be honest, and as is all bar 3 positions, if I'm being brutally honest in my opinion. It's basically a little mini league now between Abingdon, Bournemouth Sports and Portishead Town as to who finishes 9th, 10th and 11th. Southampton women absolutely breaks my heart, but yeah, they're gone. Portishead's win last week and beating Southampton women themselves, it's meant that it's given Portishead now have a fighting chance of staying up. Do I think they will? Probably not. I think Bournemouth Sports will probably nick enough points. I think Abingdon have probably got just enough about them to maybe, looking to stay up. Really looking at the goal difference there, so that's worthy of that extra point. So that I haven't really got too much to be too much jeopardy or drama, to be honest. It's all going with form.
A heck of a thing down the bottom there, hasn't it? Because just looking at the last 2 games for Portishead, they lost to Bournemouth Sports and then beat Southampton Women. So all just round the bottom there, and they were just little 1-0 wins as well. So it does look like it's a bit of a tricky one. You mentioned about the running. Portishead have got Bristol Rovers, yourselves, and AFC Bournemouth. I mean, if you're Portishead now, you're looking at that and going, 2 teams trying to battle it out, like you say, for the title. And, of course, Bristol Rovers, and it just depends which side turns up there. Is that really why you're sitting there and thinking that Portishead probably won't make it because that's just a bridge too far for them?
Yeah. Between that and the goal difference, but Bournemouth Sports have got a tricky run in as well. I know they've got a few teams up at the top, so I'd probably put all of your mortgages on the league will finish in exactly the same layout as it is now, maybe bar 2 teams swapping over, and that would only be Portishead and Bournemouth Sports, one of those 2. But yeah, I think the league is done and dusted now. But for me, from just being sort of selfish and wanting to sort of talk up my Mayfield's team a little bit, for us, this would be brilliant. We're by no means guaranteed second at the moment. We've still got a little bit of work to do. We've got 2 very tricky games in AFC Bournemouth next in the league. We've got Swindon Town to come on the last day of the season. So we need to try and make sure that we can get to 6 points when we play Portishead and Bournemouth Sports, because those other 2 games are going to be tricky. But if we can finish in second position, that'd be wonderful. We finished in the top 3 in our first 2 seasons within the division, but we were quite a way off. Would have been Exeter and Cardiff at the time, now Gwalior, and the same with Bournemouth and Exeter. There was quite a big gap. So for us to actually secure that record finish, and if we can try and stay as close as we can to Bournemouth, then fantastic. We fancy our chances against them. We've beaten them 4-3 in the determining round. They narrowly beat us 2-1 in the 3 days later in the league, with a goal in the 89th minute and the 92nd minute. But we've shown in the performances that we know that we can get something out of them. The slight frustration for me personally is that we faced them in the Hampshire Cup semi-finals at the weekend, and then 3 days later we play them in the league again. So there's no respite. We've got our players that are going to be having to give 110% in quick succession, while Bournemouth have got salaried players sat on the bench that they're able to rotate in. So that might make the league match that a little bit trickier. But we fancy our chances in every game. We know we've got a good competitive squad, and we know that we can make their life difficult. If they're going to get anything against us, they're going to have to be at their absolute best or hope for a little bit of magic, like they did in the home tie in the last season, where it was a Molly Barron-Clark won the goal to give them a 2-1 victory over us when we were playing at Chichester City's ground while we were waiting for our home ground to be finished. So it's going to be a couple of exciting games, but yeah, in summary, I think this table is pretty much done and dusted.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think the tier 4 Southern leagues are not looking all that great in terms of the excitement factor, really. And as you just mentioned as well, I did just have a look at the Bournemouth Sports ones. They do have a bit of a tough running, but their next game is Southampton Women, and you do kind of get the feeling that if they can get the win there, then that's probably enough to secure survival. But certainly up top, some great stuff. I don't know if I ever told you, Stu, I was born in Swindon, so that's my claim to fame on the old Southwest table there. So I always keep an eye out to see how they're getting on. I'm very pleased to see they won 6-0 at the weekend. Put a little smile on my face. It was a nice weekend, actually, for football results. So that was quite nice. I'm going to ask one last question to the three of you. We can get rid of this now because I don't need the league anymore. There we go. Look, there's your beautiful faces. Very quick one. And it's sort of been mentioned. We've spoken a bit about the league changes and the things like that are going on. Obviously, the WSL and the Championship potentially considering how they're going to expand themselves. Now, we did a show not so long ago about the WNL changes and the Tier 5 and 6 changes that were going to happen. And I just kind of wondered what your thoughts were on the sort of things that are being floated for the WSL and the Championship. Because WSL could end up becoming a closed league. And you'd end up with 16 teams in there. No relegation, which wouldn't be very helpful. You'd maybe still get teams promoted over 4 years. So it's being built up each, and that makes no sense to me either, because if you've got 12 teams in there, you're going to end up with 13. So now you're going to have a rest day every week, which I just hate those things. They really wind me up. Which club is it that's not playing this week? Just play 14 in there, 2. But if they do that and we end up with 16 in the WSL and 16 in the Championship, which that's 32 teams in leagues that really only had 24 initially, so that's 8 new teams. So I just kind of wondered, do you think that this is going to impact what's already been decided by the WNL positively or negatively? Stu, I'll kick off with you because I know you've got your food coming up shortly. So we'll just make sure you get your say in.
I've actually softened on this a little bit. It looks, since Nikki Deshay and the WPLL have come out towards the end of last week, it seems to be that while relegation might be closed, that the ladder will still be there for teams to climb up, which is for me a good thing. And while I'd love to see a number of teams pushing up quickly to get the magical 16 teams in nice and early, I actually think maybe it might be in the best interests for a lot of teams if it is slightly staggered or slightly slower, because we talk about trying to trigger investment in the WSL. I think the real key to all of this is the investment in the Championship and the upper team, the Premier League back teams within the National League. Because if we haven't got the likes of your Portsmouth, Ipswiches, Oxford United, Wolves, Burnley, Forest, they need to be Championship ready in the next sort of 2 years, really. And I don't think either of them are. You've seen how Portsmouth walked the Southern Division last year, but have really struggled this year. So it just goes to show that there's a massive gap between the third tier and the second tier, and an even bigger gap between the second tier and the first tier. So while we all romantically, we want to try and upwards fill these leagues as quick as we can, the reality is we probably don't. I'm not privy to this exactly, but the rumours I had were that last year had hashtag been promoted instead of Portsmouth, they wouldn't have looked to take that option because they wouldn't have been able to meet the necessary criteria. I don't know what's happened behind the scenes this year, but I can't imagine. I've not seen that they've had a huge financial injection to make that leap. So I actually think that it will go through. I think that the relegation will be paused, but I don't actually think it will be as bad a thing as we perhaps talking about. Actually, I think it could be for the better in the long run. The one thing I would like to see still is a sponsor coming in for the National League. All of this will be for nothing if the status quo of the National League is still the same in 2 seasons' time, when all of this is due to come in place. There needs to be carrot at the end of the stick. There needs to be some sort of prize money, even if it's not for the teams finishing second, third, and fourth. There needs to be prize money for that team finishing top, so that it gives them a fighting chance to compete in the division above. Because as we've seen from the league tables, there's just such disparity between the two divisions that we need them to be 16 to 16, but we need it to be ready. We can't run before we can walk. I know there's a lot of clubs that probably talk a good game, but it's taken Newcastle 3 years and they've been spending quite heavily, where Wolves haven't been spending quite heavily. They might have access to that money potentially if they had enough reassurance of the investment, but they're not putting that investment in. And Newcastle have shown what they need to do, and they've put millions in. They've been putting players in full time. They've been trying to get players like Nikita Paris in. Portsmouth, for example, when they got promoted, they've not had anywhere near the budget. They've been doing well to bring in England under-19 internationals. So yeah, I think we've just got to be a little bit patient and let the leagues grow organically. And for that reason, I think WPLL are probably being the most sensible ones, because let's face it, we're the ones talking with our hearts, but they're the ones probably using their heads and also their fingers.
It's interesting. I mean, you talk about the promotion and the money, the prize money that they'd get from that, and actually, it's a really good point. I mean, you take Bedford for example; they won their league, the Eastern region, because there's not any prize money. It's then just about, well, how do you cut your cloth accordingly? And so what sometimes happens is that you get a bunch of players who are really good at tier 5, but maybe can't necessarily guarantee promotion in tier 4. So they just get cut loose to bring in newer players that are more experienced at that level, which feels very, very harsh. But it is the realities of the way the game's going. So yeah, that's a reasonable point. Stu, if you feel like you need to jump off at any point, please do feel free to. But you're, of course, welcome to sit there and listen to these two lads.
I do need to leave. So, but I just want to say thank you, guys, for having me. Great to see you all. And hope you guys have a great weekend. And hopefully I can speak to you guys next week.
And you, let's hope so. Thank you very much, you. So, yeah, Gazza, you've been quiet for a bit. And you usually good for a strong opinion. Is he right?
Yeah, I think so. I would never sit here and say, "Oh yeah, I think actually we should have completely closed leagues and there should be no upward downward movement at all." But I think actually, I think it will be good to almost try and stop this almost a bit of a rut that we're in at the moment, where teams that go up just come down. Like Stu mentioned, Crystal Palace, bottom of the WSL, Portsmouth, bottom of the Championship. Teams that have gone up look like may just come straight back down. And I think if you give them an opportunity, if we are looking to expand teams, if you continue to promote teams, the potential issue with that though is that you could end up in a position where you're upfilling the Championship faster than you're upfilling the WSL. I think we would need to look at potentially the champions and the runners up from the Championship go up. Otherwise, you're going to be adding an extra team to the Championship every year as 2 teams are coming up and only 1 team is leaving. So that's something that needs to be ironed out. But yeah, I think if Portsmouth and Palace, for example, I mean, obviously they could both stay up. It only takes really 1 win for Portsmouth to move themselves off the bottom, really, assuming that Sheffield United don't also win on the same day. And then, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that Palace could overhaul Villa. Needs 2 results really there, but they're not, neither of them down yet. But if they had a season, 2 seasons, or however long it was, to be able to adapt to the league, then they could be more consistent. Obviously, the danger there is that once you eventually fill your team, you get your 16th team up, your 16th team then just comes back down the year after. So there is that sense of it gives teams time to adapt. I think it's a nice way of doing it. I think I would always much rather see leagues filled through merit than through an application process. So I would rather it take a bit of time, and you promote the champions and the runners up of the championship, rather than say opening it up to a application process where you look at the table at the moment and the championship table at the moment, and you probably think Durham and London City probably don't have the best facilities. So let's say this season London City come second. I wouldn't want to be in a position where you actually go, oh, okay, but Newcastle, for example, or Charlton, Bristol have better facilities, and Bristol can use Ashton Gate. They finished 4th. Let's promote them. I'd much rather it be done through merit, and I think if this is a way of guaranteeing that those teams in the WSL and in the Championship deserve to be there because of their performances on the pitch, rather than just meeting ground grading criteria off it, then that's the way to go.
John, I mean, do you agree with this? Because the flip side of this argument is that it makes a mockery, first of all, of the WSL, insofar as once, unless you're fighting for the top 4, you're safe. So if you've got a team playing down the bottom that's got to play a Chelsea and Arsenal, a Man United, a Man City, and the top 3 positions are, at risk, it doesn't matter to that team, does it? It's not like they've got to sit there and put everything into that game. Well, we're not going down, so it's not the end of the world. It takes a lot of the pressure off. So does it sort of mean that really there's not as much competition? Is not the more sensible option, and I've got to be honest, one that I probably subscribe to, just purely because I am a massive fan of we say, the merit. Why do we not, if we're going to put one team up each year, why do we not just promote 2 and relegate 1?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what's been said, and I agree with a lot of the positives. However, I think for myself personally, I'm not a big fan of where it could end up in regards to some of my local teams. So unless if you've got a big badge, it feels to me that the stronger will get stronger. And I know that could potentially happen anyway, but instead of just focusing on 12 teams, you focus on maybe 32. So you 2 lots of 16, which is a good thing for those 32 teams. However, what you've basically done then is you've took your 4 best teams in your tier 3, moved them up, and then it's very much a big cut off from that 32 down to like what will probably be to do tier 3. Bearing in mind those B teams will come in at that point as well. Will all probably be in that kind of level as well. You're looking at the majority of teams that we're currently talking about will all be in tier 4. So yes, I kind of agree that this will put the emphasis more on some of the championship sides and some of the bigger teams. I get that, and I do think it's like it is a monopoly. The richer teams will end up in the top 32. However, this is really kind of driving that forward, and for me, it's against the lower league lingo kind of teams that we're talking about. I'm not a big fan of just having a WSL with no relegation, although Gareth does make a good point, as does Stuart. I would like there to be some sort of competition there, because that there isn't no relegation, is there? So it doesn't kind of add up to normal English football. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that, but Gareth does raise a good point in the yo-yoing and teams going up and down. But for me, as a Midlands fan, as a tier 3, tier 4, tier 5 fan, I'm quite against it, because those leagues do need to expand, but the gap between the top 32 and the teams below will just get even bigger.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Go on, guys. Go. Yeah.
I think you're right, but if you were just to, I don't think that the expansion of leagues is something that's going to stop. I don't think they're going to expand the size of National League leagues and regional leagues and not do the same for the Championship and WSL. I think that having a domestic season with only 22 games feels mad to me anyway. So I think there should be some sort of expansion of the leagues. And I would say that potentially, if you just take the top four now from each and move them up, um, then that potentially is even more disruptive because then next season, if let's say Feds or a Derby or a West Brom or whatever win the league, then they're probably even 2-3 years further behind than where they would be. They're probably not teams at the start of the league at the start of the season were like, we're going to aim for the league because we're championship ready. We're ready for that league. Whereas I think you look at Burnley, Forest, Wolves, they will back themselves as being prepared or having the budgets to be prepared. I think if you do it this way, it can give some of those other teams that have ambition to go into the championship, because let's be real, not every team probably does. Um, it gives those teams that want to be in a championship chance to figure out where they're going to get the budgets from, be able to start looking at bringing sponsors in, be able to start putting kind of plans in place for facilities or whatever it is that they need to do, instead of kind of rapidly moving fast forward to where they could be in a couple of years' time. Because Feds, for example, I know I've spoken about them already, but like I said, they play at a leisure centre. That ground grading is probably not going to meet the ground grading for the championship. And so if you just take the top four away, suddenly they're in sixth. If they're sixth, they're second. In a year or two's time, they could be going up to the championship without being ready, either on the pitch or off the pitch, or in the kind of with the accountant really. So yeah, I
You
don't
say
like the
that,
idea of a
rather than
closed
play at a
system.
university, don't they?
Yeah, true.
So, I mean, I'm not sure quite what it'd be like, but yeah, you would think a leisure centre would be a bridge too far, perhaps, on that one. But yeah, I had one last question, and to be fair, it is a question just for Gareth. I'll be honest with you, it comes from your social media, because obviously we know that Withenshaw have had a little bit of success over the course of the last 7 days, which you're more than happy for you to shout out should you wish to. But something has come across my eyes that I am not a huge, I don't understand. So if I'm right in saying, Withenshaw, your nickname is the Ammies.
Correct. Yeah.
But then I saw this thing saying up the Ammies, and that was for Salford City. So 2 questions. How? And also, what is an Ammy?
AMI is short for amateur. So not now, but previously, Withenshaw were Withenshaw amateurs. So AMIs is short for that. And Salford originally back in the 40s and the 60s or whatever it was when they were formed as Salford Amateurs, which is why they're still the Ammies. But yeah, success. Our second team won their league this year, won it on Sunday. So a friend of the show, Matt Crane, in his first full season in charge of the second team, won the Cheshire Championship East. So he'll now go into the Cheshire Premier. Which is great. Really happy for him. I did an interview with him after the game on Sunday, and yeah, he says it was the first time he'd held that trophy, but he was gripping it white knuckle, like he was not letting go of that. So yeah, I don't blame him. He's done a great job. They're a great group of girls. And yeah, they all deserve it. Matt deserves it. The girls deserve it. When the news trickled through, they were 1-0 down, needed a point to win the league. News trickled through, they were 1-0 down, and everyone at Darwin was like, "Oh no, what is going on? Surely not. Come on, Matt." But yeah, they turned it around. 2 goals in quick succession from Shannon, saw them crowned champions. So yeah, proud of him, proud of his team. But he drives a hard bargain. He's got them training tonight with no more games left to play. The league is done. The title's wrapped up. Didn't even give them a week off. They're training tonight.
Outrageous. Unbelievable.
I
But
said to him,
that's been success. Hopefully they're having a bit of a laugh.
I hope he brings success and not just resentment of why you're making this train the week after we've won the title with 0 games to prepare for. But, he wants to set the standard, so I don't blame him, really.
No, fair. It's a long time before pre-season otherwise, so got to try and keep the eye in and see what they can do for next year. Brilliant, boys. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be back next week. We are going to be looking at probably Tier 5 again and just having a little bit of an update as to what is going on around our regional leagues. So join us next week for more fun, frolic, discussion and possibly even debate. We shall find out. But until then, so long, everybody. See you next week.